SAA is unlikely to meet its debt obligation of 9.2 billion rand when it matures in March next year. The airline appeared before Parliament's Standing Committee on Public Accounts today. Now, it had to account for its annual report, financial statements, and irregular, fruitless, and wasteful expenditure for the year 2016 and 2017. For more on this, we're joined by the Scopa Chairperson, Themba Godi. Thanks for your time tonight, Mr. Godi. What was your response just listening to the dire state at which South African Airways is actually in, and the fact that they are unable to account for any of what has led them to this point?
Well, yeah, I'm trying to look for the most appropriate adjective. But yeah, you know, you listen to these things, you look at the situation, and what goes through your mind is, but what kind of people did we have all along in the entity that would take decisions, do things, fail to do things that will land us where we are? Because the situation indeed is a very, very dire one. Not only in relation to, you know, the liabilities of the SAA vis-a-vis its assets, but generally its financial state and even its management capabilities. It is a dire state indeed.
How would you describe what has led to the unmaking or the undoing of SAA, as it were, at least from the information that has been put before you?
Well, look, I think it will be a combination of factors. Firstly, the instability in the leadership of the SAA meant that there was always short-termism, there was lack of continuity, but also the inability to have people with the right skills and who have the best interests of the airline, I think have combined to create this kind of untenable situation where the airline is, for all intents and purposes, unable to continue existing under these current circumstances unless there is a massive injection of public funds to save it, to keep it afloat.
And of course, when you talk about the need for money in order to recapitalize and almost save SAA, there's of course the huge chunks of money that have been taken out of that institution without necessarily being able to be accounted for. What is Parliament's plan in terms of holding those individuals who have been at the helm of SAA, who have watched and to a large extent been responsible for that mismanagement? What is your next step from here going forward?
Well, two things. Firstly, we have implored the leadership of SAA to say, look, the first thing that you need to do, firstly, is to stop the leakage of money, because in the past financial year, SAA had a loss of about 5 billion rands. And secondly, look at your cost drivers, because they make revenue of around 30 billion, but their expenditure side is very high. Now, in relation to individuals who have brought the institution to where it is, there are a number of investigations that they reported on, but we're not happy as a committee because their report on those investigations did not take us to those details where we'll be able to pin the name of an individual to an act, because that is what we want, so that people can be held accountable. It's not enough to merely say we have done an investigation, or officials are going through a disciplinary process, or people have done double payment or recovering the money without knowing who is that individual who was responsible, because unless accountability is pinned to an individual, people will always do wrong things in the knowledge that it is going to be generalized within the institution, which I think up to now has been the case. We want going forward to ensure that accountability is laid at the doorstep of that individual who had put pen on paper, or who has not been able to do that which he or she has been hired to do.
But how are you going to get there, Themba Godi? What is your plan in a very practical sense? Because as we speak now, we also have, you know, the outstanding appearance in a separate committee that involves the former SAA chair, Dudumi Anyway, as she hasn't been able to appear. So within the powers that have been given to you as a parliamentary oversight body, what are your plans?
Well, no. It's a quite a simple one. You know, when you look at fruitless and wasteful expenditure, irregular expenditure, as well as investigations, they gave us a spreadsheet, but we felt it was not enough. In our next engagement, we would want to have the details and the individuals concerned, as well as the action that has been taken, because after all, first and foremost, the responsibility for actioning lies with management and the board. Now, in instances where we'll find that action has not been taken against specific individuals, well, we're going to hold those who are in the office available, but if it involves criminality, we have the ability ourselves to engage with the police as well as the NPA to ensure that those who have done wrong are held accountable.
In terms of the future of SAA as Scopa, knowing what you do now, what are the recommendations that you'll be giving to Parliament about the functioning of SAA? Do you think that it still needs to be kept? Well,
look, as a committee, our commitment is that SAA should be kept afloat. But, you know, if you look at SAA and other state-owned enterprises, it's almost as if there are people who are deliberately mismanaging these institutions so that, you know, they can be sold for, you know, for R1. Our interest is that if the state is going to pump money into any parastatal, there has to be conditions, first amongst which will be a demonstration for good governance and the ability to deliver on the mandate for which that institution has been established. So we believe that SAA must be kept, but cannot be kept on the basis of bailouts. It has to be kept on the basis of the ability to generate profits. I mean, you look at an office in, I think it's in Miami, where you have about 57 employees, and SAA does not fly there, and those employees each is paid about 65,000 rands per month. That office is there, has been there, and you ask yourself, but who opened that office? Who signed for it? What was the intention? So, I mean, it's those simple things that can be fixed by any person who is committed to doing the right thing that will ensure that SAA is kept afloat.
But to the extent that the right thing has not been done to date, I mean, what are you basing this confidence on that going forward things will change?
Well, firstly, there is an intervention committee chaired by the Deputy Minister of Finance that is going to be there until August, and the expectation is that by then SAA should be able to be on its own. Secondly, we're given commitment that the board that is in place is going to be there for the full term, and even the CEO. We're not going to have him removed in the next 3, 4, or 5 months, because that is the kind of stability that SAA has lacked. And thirdly, we as Scopa are going to keep a very tight leash on SAA to ensure that all the outstanding things that need to be done, especially around governance and financial management, are corrected.